So you sent us a whole load of stuff on the upcoming Nintendo Switch 2. We've got Wikipedia articles, some YouTube takes.
Yeah, quite a mix.
Definitely. So our job today is basically to sift through all that, pull out the really key details, the interesting bits, give everyone a clear picture of what this new console is all about.
Exactly. There's a lot of noise, a lot of speculation, but there's some solid info out there now, too. The original Switch was, massive, wasn't it? So expectations are high.
For sure. Okay, let's kick off with the timeline. The official announcement was January 16th, 2025.
Right. Then the big reveal event on April 2nd.
And the launch date, the one everyone's waiting for, is June 5th, 2025. So actually not that far off now.
No, it's coming up fast. And you mentioned the original Switch, over 146 million sold since, 2017?
Yeah, incredible numbers.
Yeah.
So the Switch 2, it's a pretty big deal for Nintendo.
Absolutely. It feels like more than just a hardware refresh.
Okay, and the price. That's always a hot topic.
Yeah.
Let's run through the numbers we have. US is $449.99.
Uh-huh. Which is quite a jump from the original's launch price.
Definitely. About 50% higher.
Yeah, roughly. We'll get into the reactions to that later, I'm sure.
For sure. Australia, A, $699. Canada, CA, $629.99.
Okay.
Europe is looking at $469.99. UK is $395.99.
Right.
And Japan, $49,980. So, yeah, it's positioned quite differently, more premium, perhaps.
Seems that way. It's definitely not the sort of budget-friendly entry point the original Switch was.
Now, something Nintendo apparently focused on early, like since 2019, was backward compatibility, or retro compatibility, I guess.
Yeah, that's crucial. The good news seems to be that, yes, it will play most original Switch games.
Okay, so maybe a few exceptions, but your existing game cards should work.
That's the plan, which honestly is a huge relief for anyone with a big Switch library.
Totally. It makes upgrading much less painful, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That smooth transition seems key. They started development way back in 2019.
Right. Aiming to avoid, the mess we saw with some other console launches, the shortages, the scalpers.
Exactly. They even showed it off privately at Gamescom last August, apparently. Enhanced Switch games, Unreal Engine 5 demos, getting that early developer feedback.
And that delay. It was meant to be late 2024, wasn't it?
Yeah, Bloomberg reported it got pushed to early 2025 specifically to build up stock and avoid those launch chaos issues.
Smart move, probably, even if it caused a little wobble in their stock price at the time.
Probably, yeah. Prioritizing the consumer experience, maybe.
Okay, so that's the setup. Let's dive into the hardware itself. What's new under the hood? It's still hybrid, right? Handheld, docked.
Yeah, that core concept isn't changing. You can still play it portable, tabletop, or on the TV.
But the screen's getting an upgrade.
Seems so. Reports, like from Omdia, suggest a larger LCD. Maybe around 7.9 inches.
Okay, bigger and resolution.
Looking like 1080p in handheld and tabletop, which is nice. And apparently up to 120 hertz refresh rate there, too.
Well, 120 hertz portable, that's impressive. And docked.
Docked. They're aiming for 4K at 60 fps, plus HDR10 support.
Right, so better colors, contrast.
Yeah.
But pretty significant visual jump over all that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We also know internal storage is getting bigger, though they haven't said exactly how much yet.
Okay, TBD on that. But the controllers, the Joy-Con 2s, that sounds like a big change.
It does. The main thing is how they attach magnetically now, instead of sliding onto rails.
Huh, magnets. Wonder how sturdy that feels.
Yeah, we'll have to see. They're also apparently a bit more ergonomic. Raised edge, bigger buttons, and joysticks.
And importantly, your old Joy-Cons and Pro controllers will still work.
Yep, compatibility there, which is good news for people with accessories.
Okay. And these new Joy-Con 2s have new tech inside? Hall effect sensors.
That's the rumor, yes. Which should, fingers crossed, finally kill the Joy-Con drift problem.
Oh, that would be amazing.
About time.
Tell me about it. Plus, they have optical sensors, so they can work. Like a computer mouse.
A mouse. Okay, that's
Yeah.
expected. How would that work in games? That's the interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Arandana on YouTube was speculating about potential uses in different genres. Could be quite innovative if done well.
Yeah, could be. And there's a mic built in. And a new button.
Uh-huh. A microphone and a dedicated button on the right one for game chat, apparently for voice chat.
Okay. And one other hardware thing, a second USB-C port.
Yeah, on the top. Seems it's mainly for connecting a new camera accessory they're releasing and also for charging when it's in tabletop mode.
Ah, charging in tabletop. That's actually a really neat little improvement. Always annoying having the cable stick out the bottom.
Right. Just a quality of life thing.
So any other tech specs floating around from Wikipedia or wherever?
Yeah, some preliminary stuff. Size-wise, with Joy-Cons on, it's about the same thickness as the original, just wider and taller. Weight's around 534 grams.
Okay.
Battery is 500 220 millar. They estimate, the usual wide range, 2 to 6.5 hours playtime. Takes about 3 hours to charge.
Standard stuff there. Wireless.
Wi-Fi 6, which is good. Faster, more stable connection. Bluetooth 4.1, interestingly, not 5. And the usual sensors, accelerometer, gyro, brightness.
Gotcha. Okay, so hardware sounds like a solid upgrade. What about the software side? Games, the ecosystem.
Right, equally important. So game distribution is still physical cards and digital downloads via the eShop.
And the physical cards are the same format. Compatible.
Apparently so, yeah. Your old Switch cards should work in the new one.
But there's this new thing, game key cards. What's that about?
Yeah, this one's a bit controversial. Basically, you buy a physical box with a card, but the card just has a download key.
So no game on the actual card. You still need internet to download it.
Exactly. And you still need the card inserted to play even after downloading.
Huh. Okay. I can see why people concerned about preservation aren't thrilled about that, like Arundon mentioned.
Yeah, it kind of undermines the point of physical media for some people.
Right. On a more positive note, existing Switch games might get upgrades. Performance boosts.
Yeah, they've said select games might get updates, some free, maybe some paid, to take advantage of the Switch 2's power.
Okay. And Nintendo Switch Online is carrying over.
Yep, the subscription service continues. Still needed for online multiplayer in many games and for the classic game libraries.
And the big news there is GameCube games.
Yes. Finally, exclusive to Switch 2 under the NSO expansion pack tier.
Nice. People have been asking for that for ages. WVFRM podcast guys were pretty hyped about that.
Understandably.
Yeah.
Thinking about playing Wind Waker, Mario Sunshine, Pokemon XD on this new hardware.
Yeah, that's a big draw. And a wireless GameCube controller, too.
Apparently so. Completes the nostalgia trip.
Okay, what about new software features? Game chat we mentioned. Game share.
Yeah, GameShare lets you share your screen remotely with friends and even use images from that new camera accessory. It sounds interesting.
And third-party support. Always a big question for Nintendo consoles.
Looks pretty strong this time, actually. That GDC survey showed a lot of developer interest. Plus, Nintendo bought Shiver Entertainment, which should help with ports and external development.
So what kind of third-party games are we actually seeing announced?
Quite a range. Stuff like My Time at Evershine, a Yuka Replayly remaster,
Okay.
potential Microsoft support, maybe updated Switch games, but also maybe big ports like Halo, Master Chief Collection, or Flight Simulator 2024.
Wow, Halo on Switch. That would be something.
Wouldn't it? Then you've got confirmed stuff like Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, Metal Gear Solid Delta, Assassin's Creed Mirage and Shadows.
Those are the big names.
Huge. And there have been hints or listings for Tekken 8 and maybe even Red Dead Redemption 2.
Okay, that's a much broader lineup than the original Switch had at launch. Encouraging.
Definitely. Nintendo is also doing some pre-launch trial events, the Switch 2 experience.
Right, get hands on time. And that Welcome Tour game.
Yeah, a paid digital game designed to show off the features, like the mouse control.
Paid, though. That got some flack, didn't it? People saying it should be free, like Wii Sports or Astro's Playroom.
Yeah, WVFRM called it a huge L. Seems like a missed opportunity to bundle it in.
And there's another first-party game using the mouse control. Something about basketball and wheelchairs.
Yeah, potential name drag drive. Sounds unique. Certainly. Could be an interesting showcase for that control method.
And GameCube on NSO, we covered that small fee via the expansion pack.
Right. So the big one, Mario Kart World.
Ah, yes. The open world Mario Kart. What does that even mean?
Good question. Sounds like free roaming areas, photo ops, alongside the usual Grand Prix racing. A big departure.
Sounds ambitious. But the price?
Yeah, the price. $80 digital, $90 physical.
$90 for Mario Kart. Oof.
And there was talk of maybe a $10 upgrade path for Zelda owners for Bot EW and Tot Decay performance boosts. But that's still murky.
Right, so that $80, $90 price point, combined with the $450 console price, that's where the main controversy lies, isn't it?
Absolutely. Bloomberg had flagged potential $400 plus pricing early on because of U.S. tariffs. But $449.99 is still a 50% hike over the original Switch.
And people are noticing. Lots of criticism online.
Oh, yeah. Wikipedia notes the backlash, people calling it too expensive. And the $80 first-party games just add fuel to that fire. It's technically Nintendo's priciest console launch in decades, adjusted for inflation.
What was Nintendo's justification? Doug Bowser said.
He framed it as a premium console, sitting alongside the older, cheaper Switch models, not just blaming tariffs. Though, interestingly, they did pause pre-orders briefly in the US and Canada.
To assess tariffs and market conditions. Yeah.
Yeah. Analysts think other factors are at play too. Rising development costs, maybe just seeing what the market will bear, plus, general inflation post-pandemic.
And the fan reaction.
Yeah.
Social media campaign.
Yep. Calls for price drops. Even some former Nintendo PR folks, Kit and Krista, criticized how they handled the price reveal, or rather the lack of it initially, called it disrespectful.
Ouch. Suggests maybe even Nintendo was surprised by the negativity.
Possibly. The YouTube discussions definitely picked up on this. WVFRM worried about the $80-$90 Mario Kart, comparing it unfavorably to PS5 game prices.
But they still thought fans would buy it.
Yeah, they acknowledged the dedicated fan base, but still thought the paid Welcome Tour demo was a mistake. They were excited about GameCube Online and the Mario Kart concept itself, though.
And behind the games, what was their take?
They kind of said, look, the criticism is valid, especially the $90 for Mario Kart without clear justification, but people have the right to buy it if they want it. Don't feel guilty.
Interesting angle. Buy it cheaper elsewhere if you object.
Yeah, they suggested finding retailers selling it for less, like €70, €75, to send Nintendo a message about the RRP. They were frustrated with the sort of moralizing about not buying it.
And they called for broader criticism of industry pricing, not just Nintendo.
Exactly. Make it consistent.
What about Urandana? Any specific points on pricing or reactions?
They were more focused on the games and hardware potential, excited about Metroid Prime 4, potential new Mario, third-party stuff like Cyberpunk, Elden Ring.
Right, but worried about optimization.
Yeah, given some third-party struggles on the original Switch. They loved the new Joy-Con ideas, especially the mouse function, but were disappointed about not getting Hall effect sticks, maybe because of the magnets.
Right. Trade-offs.
Yeah. They also touched on the competitive landscape Steam Deck, ROG Ally, hoping it pushes Nintendo, but also worried the Switch 2 might age quickly like the original's chip did.
But backward compatibility was a big plus for them.
Huge plus. But they shared the concern about game key cards hurting preservation, and worried that $80 might become the new standard price for Nintendo games, not just an exception for Mario Kart World.
Yeah, that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Minor worries about UI, eShop, online stability too.
Pretty standard hopes for improvement there, yeah.
Okay, so wrapping it all up. It sounds like the Switch 2 is a pretty substantial evolution. Powerful hardware upgrades, interesting new features like the mouse control, potentially strong game lineup, backward compatibility.
Definitely. Lots to be excited about. It continues that hybrid approach Nintendo nailed with the original.
With that price. The $450 console, the $80 or even $90 games like Mario Kart World.
Mm-hmm.
That's clearly the big hurdle, the main point of discussion and concern.
Without a doubt, it's generated a lot of debate.
So it leaves us wondering, doesn't it? How will developers really use this new power, these new Joy-Con tricks? Will drift actually be solved without Hall effect sticks?
And yeah, the big one. How will the market react to that premium price? Especially right now. Will people pay it?
Those are the $1 million, or rather the $450 questions, I suppose.
Yeah.
So a final thought for everyone listening. Nintendo's clearly mixing innovation with familiar ideas here, aiming for another hit. After hearing all this, all the potential upsides and the definite pricing concerns, what's the one thing about the Switch 2 that grabs you the most or worries you the most? And how does that weigh into whether you'll jump in come June? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.